Welcome back to Crime Documentary Files. In this video, we will continue exploring two of the most unbelievable criminal cases that took place in South Korea. Before we begin, we'd love your support. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much. In 2007, a father-daughter duo in South Korea captured public attention due to a rare genetic disorder. Lee Young-hak and his 4-year-old daughter, Lee Ah-yoon, were both diagnosed with gigantic jaw cysts, a condition that causes large tumors to develop on the gums, taking over the entire oral cavity, severely deforming the face, and leading to bite misalignment. This was an extremely rare hereditary disease within their family. At the time, there were only a handful of cases worldwide, yet it appeared twice within the same family. Young-hak first showed symptoms at the age of 9 and had undergone multiple surgeries to remove the tumors. By then, only one of his original teeth remained. While the tumor growth stopped in adulthood, he was also diagnosed with level 2 intellectual disability. Tragically, when his daughter Ah-yoon was born, she also began showing symptoms of the same condition. At a young age, enormous tumors had already started growing between her teeth, distorting her face to the point where daily life became extremely difficult. Their daughter's illness only worsened the struggles of an already financially struggling family. A Korean TV network soon caught wind of their situation and decided to feature their story in a documentary. On screen, Young-hak was portrayed as a devoted father caring for his daughter, sharing his painful battle with fate. The footage of him wearing a doll mask while traveling across the country to raise funds for his daughter's surgery deeply moved audiences. After the documentary aired, it sparked an overwhelming public response. People from all over reached out to help, raising a staggering amount of donations to fund Ah-yoon's surgeries. Thanks to this, Young-hak became a national icon, earning the affectionate nickname Molar Daddy. He even published a book titled Molar Daddy's Happiness. Eventually, Ah-yoon successfully underwent surgery, and their family life seemed to return to normal. Over time, they gradually faded from the public eye. However, no one could have predicted that 10 years later, in 2017, these two names would resurface, not in a heartwarming story, but in a brutal murder case that sent shivers down the nation's spine. On September 30th, 2017, a middle-aged couple rushed into a police station frantic with fear. Their 8th-grade daughter, identified as Kim, a name changed per South Korean law, had gone out earlier that day but never returned, and they couldn't reach her by phone. Before leaving, Kim had excitedly told her parents, "I'm going to my friend's house to watch a concert of my favorite idol." But as night fell and she still hadn't returned, her mother began to worry and contacted her friends. One of them told her, "Kim left our house a while ago." With no sign of their daughter, Kim's parents immediately reported her disappearance to the police. Days passed with no trace of Kim. The investigation into her disappearance made no progress until October 5th, when the police suddenly arrested a suspect, Young-hak. A week later, on October 13th, police discovered Kim's lifeless body in a remote mountainous area in Gangwon Province. The moment this news broke, it sent shockwaves across South Korea. People realized that the suspect in this murder case was the very man they had once donated money to help. Lee Young-hak, a severely ill man with a level 2 intellectual disability, a devoted father who loved his family, was now a murder suspect. Could there have been some kind of misunderstanding? But as the police investigation unfolded, the public soon learned that the real misunderstanding had happened 10 years earlier. They had mistaken a monster for an angel and an antisocial predator for a heartwarming, inspirational figure. The victim, Kim, had been an elementary school classmate of Young-hak's daughter, Ah-yoon. Though they had attended different middle schools and lost touch for a long time, Kim had recently received a group message from Ah-yoon inviting friends over. Excited, she agreed to go. However, she was the only one who responded to the invitation. Surveillance footage near the Lee family's home captured Kim walking into the house with Ah-yoon, but there was no footage of her ever leaving. Shortly after, another surveillance camera captured Molar Daddy himself, Young-hak. He was seen dragging a large black suitcase out of the house. First, he parked his car very close to the entrance, as if afraid of being seen. He then stuffed the suitcase into the trunk and sped away at high speed. Before leaving, he removed the car's dashcam and drove straight to Gangwon Province. Police took note of his suspicious behavior in the surveillance footage and launched a deeper investigation. As they narrowed in on him, Young-hak realized that he was about to be caught. In a desperate attempt to create an alibi, he tried to commit suicide with his daughter by taking sleeping pills. Fortunately, police arrived in time to save them, placing them under arrest and transporting them to the hospital. While searching a personal website run by Young-hak, police discovered that a week prior, he had uploaded a funeral photo of his late wife, Choi Mi-sun, on the homepage. He had also posted a message about how much he missed her and how he had gone to the seaside. After his arrest, another post appeared on the website. A farewell letter from Young-hak to his daughter Ayun, written before taking the sleeping pills. This raised an eerie question. If Lee Young-hak was already in custody, who had posted this message? The police quickly found that it had been uploaded by Young-hak's older brother. He was likely helping to fabricate an alibi for his younger brother through this staged suicide attempt. Since he had only taken a small dose of the pills and received timely medical attention, Young-hak soon regained consciousness. Confronted with overwhelming evidence, he confessed and revealed the location of the body. Ayun also regained consciousness after several days. During a police investigation, authorities discovered a shocking recorded video confession. Young-hak had filmed himself on his way back from dumping the body. In the video, he appeared panicked, eyes bloodshot, desperately trying to justify himself. "I didn't mean to kill her. Lately, I've been thinking about suicide, so I put sleeping pills in some nutritional supplements. Kim came over and ate some of it, and she died. I didn't know what else to do, so I had to get rid of the body." But the evidence proved otherwise. In the first autopsy, police found that Kim had multiple broken ribs. More disturbingly, ligature marks were discovered on her neck, suggesting she had been strangled with a rope. The final cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation. On October 13, 2017, police announced the results of their investigation. The suspect, Young-hak, had given the victim Kim sleeping pills and engaged in sexual harassment. When Kim woke up and resisted, Young-hak, fearing exposure, killed her. Investigators also discovered multiple adult items in Young-hak's home, leading them to suspect that he had a tendency toward sexual offenses. Although the first autopsy report found no evidence of sexual assault or abuse, police speculated that this could be due to Young-hak having sexual dysfunction. When the investigation results were revealed, an even more shocking truth was laid bare before the world. Lee Young-hak's daughter, Ayun, played a key role in this crime as an accomplice. The initial message Ayun sent to Kim had been orchestrated by Young-hak. He told his daughter, "Kim had a good relationship with your mother before she passed away. She is kind and beautiful. Bring her home." Ayun, who was deeply obedient to her father, not only followed his instructions to lure Kim to their house step by step, but after Young-hak placed the large suitcase containing Kim's body into the trunk, she stood silently by, watching. On the way to the seaside after disposing of the body, Ayun sat in the passenger seat, holding her mother Mi-sun's memorial photo, and echoed her father's words in the video, claiming that Kim had mistakenly consumed a nutritional supplement laced with an excessive dose of sleeping pills. What made this even more chilling was that when Kim's mother first reached out to Ayun to ask about her daughter's whereabouts, Ayun calmly lied, saying, "I didn't see her." Later, she even texted her friends, leaving a message that read, "She's probably still alive," followed by a smiling emoji. Seeing his daughter's classmate as a replacement for his deceased wife, killing her without remorse, and even filming a video to manipulate public perception, pretending to be a grieving victim, and staging a suicide attempt to fabricate an alibi, this was far from the impulsive actions of someone with a level 2 intellectual disability. From the disposal of the body to the destruction of evidence, everything was a calculated crime. On October 25th, A prosecution official revealed that Young-hak initially refused to admit to any sexual misconduct, but after a few days, he not only changed his attitude, but also provided a detailed account of the crime. Reports indicated that Young-hak's family members were also involved in covering up the case. After the murder, his mother burned tools and evidence related to the crime. However, when questioned, she claimed, "I didn't know the things my son wanted to dispose of were related to a crime." Growing up in such a family, and suffering from the same illness as her father, Ayun developed a strong psychological dependence on Lee Young-hak. Under the control of her antisocial father, she complied with his every demand, without hesitation, without recognizing any moral boundaries, even if it meant betraying a friend who had shown her genuine kindness. However, before the public could even process the horrifying reality that the so-called national father was actually a cold-blooded murderer, another unsolved case surfaced, one that also pointed back to Young-hak. On the morning of October 13th, after confessing to murder, Young-hak appeared before reporters for the first time. However, after just a few perfunctory words of remorse, he suddenly choked up and pleaded, "Please uncover the truth about my wife Mi-sun's suicide." His statement caused an immediate stir among those present. His wife's suicide? Why would Young-hak suddenly bring up this case when he hadn't even fully admitted guilt for the murder yet? Criminal experts analyzed that this behavior was characteristic of a psychopathic mindset. Instead of showing genuine remorse for Kim's death, Young-hak was more concerned with proving his own supposed victimhood. But what kind of injustice was he claiming in his wife's case? In reality, even before Young-hak spoke up, police had already been suspicious about the circumstances surrounding his wife's death. The way Mi-sun died was sudden and full of red flags. Just 1 month before Kim's murder in the late hours of September 5th, Young-hak's wife, Mi-sun, allegedly jumped to her death from their apartment building. However, just 1 hour before at 11:30 p.m., surveillance footage showed Mi-sun casually purchasing a pack of cigarettes from a convenience store downstairs, showing no signs of distress or suicidal intent. Yet an hour later, she fell from the small bathroom window, hitting the outer wall of the building before crashing to the ground. When found, her shirt had been pulled up over her chest. 4 minutes later, Lee Young-hak ran downstairs. The first thing he did was not to check on his wife, but to reposition her body and pull her shirt down. Surveillance footage captured him appearing to cry over her, but when emergency responders arrived, he immediately stepped aside and kept making phone calls in the background. His daughter's reaction was even more unsettling. Instead of showing any emotional distress, she calmly filmed the entire scene on her phone. In the end, neither of them rode with the ambulance. Instead, they returned home without a trace of panic. 6 hours later, on the morning after Mi-sun's death, surveillance footage showed Young-hak and his older brother cleaning up the scene together and removing the police tape that had been set up. These actions not only raised suspicion among neighbors, but also made the emergency responders feel that something was off. According to reports, Young-hak told emergency responders that he had seen his wife jump out of the bathroom window himself. However, in reality, the window was extremely small, too small for a fully grown adult to fit through easily. Even more suspicious was the fact that Mi-sun's body had fallen at an odd angle. Instead of landing face down, which is common in suicides, she landed on her back with her head and spine hitting the ground first, causing her body to bend unnaturally. How could an adult woman have positioned herself in such an unnatural way while jumping from such a tiny window? Was it possible that she had been pushed out, falling backward against her will? The day after Mi-sun's death, in the evening, Young-hak handed the police a 4-page printed document claiming that it was her suicide note. Strangely, most suicide notes include personal emotions and explanations for the act. However, the content of the document Young-hak provided read less like a farewell letter and more like a formal complaint, closely resembling previous grievance letters that Mi-sun had written while she was alive. It turned out that 1 month before her death, Mi-sun had filed a lawsuit against her husband's stepfather, accusing him of sexually assaulting her for 8 years. She claimed that whenever she resisted, he would threaten her with a gun. At the time, police searched the stepfather's home, and indeed found 2 firearms. At first, he denied the allegations, but after forensic testing confirmed that his DNA was found in Mi-sun's body, he changed his statement. He then claimed that Mi-sun had seduced him and that their relationship was consensual. Later, the prosecutor's office dismissed Mi-sun's appeal due to a lack of evidence, but Young-hak then forced his wife to have sex with his stepfather again to obtain more proof. Before Mi-sun's death, Young-hak even drove her to the stepfather's house and left them alone in a room together. This horrific and morally repugnant act was more than Mi-sun could endure. On the night of her death, she and Young-hak had a heated argument. The autopsy report and crime scene investigation confirmed that Mi-sun had been physically assaulted by Young-hak before she died. However, he insisted on tying his wife's death to the stepfather's alleged sexual assault. Rather than keeping this shameful family scandal private, Young-hak spread the story everywhere, even posting it on his website to raise money for her funeral expenses. In a video recorded at the beach, he wept dramatically, saying, "My wife jumped to her death with her wedding ring to prove her loyalty to me." While one aspect of Mi-sun's suicide case remains unresolved, during their investigation, police discovered evidence that Young-hak forced his wife into prostitution. In Young-hak's computer hard drive, police found numerous videos of Mi-sun engaged in prostitution. Later, someone provided information to the police confirming that Young-hak had rented a single room in the Gangnam area to provide illicit massage services. Residents around Lee Young-hak's home also provided similar testimonies. A nearby delivery person even stated that they had witnessed many women residing in the house, frequently ordering 5 to 6 meals, making him think it was a dormitory for employees in entertainment facilities. Additionally, Young-hak's social media applications contained traces of sexual services provided by young girls. After news about Young-hak forcing his wife into prostitution was reported, Young-hak's stepfather, who was accused of sexual assault, left a suicide note hoping to clear his name and took his own life on October 25th. This made Mi-sun's suicide even more mysterious. On November 24th, police transferred the investigation results of Mi-sun's case to the prosecutor's office, predicting that she chose to take her own life because she felt her life was threatened due to continuous domestic violence and being forced into prostitution by Young-hak. 10 years ago, this impoverished couple appeared very affectionate in front of cameras as they faced life's difficulties. They struggled together for their beloved daughter. But who would have thought that this seemingly fairy tale story was, in reality, the darkest, cruelest, and bloodiest fairy tale behind the truth? The image of a simple, illness-overcoming husband that Young-hak constructed with his wife on television was completely different from his true face. In fact, signs of criminal tendencies in Young-hak were evident since his school days. He not only committed various thefts, but also randomly sexually harassed women passing by, even boasting about his sexual offenses. Due to weak social movements at that time, victims did not report to the police, and the punishments for Young-hak never amounted to much. After graduating from middle school and entering high school, due to his parents' divorce, he lived with his mother and began working at a sashimi shop. It was during this time that he met his wife, Mi-sun. At that time, Mi-sun was only 14 years old. However, 3 years later, they disregarded the genetic risk of jawbone cysts and gave birth to their daughter Ayun. Sure enough, their daughter also developed the same disease. At this point, Mi-sun was only 17 years old, while Lee Young-hak was just over 20. Subsequently, they exploited television to raise 13 billion won in donations. Of this amount, less than 1/10 was used for their daughter's surgery and post-surgical treatment costs. 2 imported cars, a 4-story building, along with his nouveau riche fashion style, and even expensive tattoos covering Young-hak's body, all implicitly indicated where the donated money had really gone. On November 6, 2017, Young-hak was transferred to the North Seoul prosecutor's office on suspicion of luring a minor and disposing of a corpse. His daughter, Lee Ayun, was also detained on charges of luring and disposing of a corpse. During the first public trial, Young-hak claimed He had fallen into a weak mental and physical state due to being clouded by hallucinogens after his wife's death. He pleaded in court to at least not be sentenced to death. To gain sympathy, he even submitted a petition for a reduced sentence, declaring that even if only for his daughter's sake, so there would be someone to perform ancestral rites for his wife in the future, the court should reconsider his sentence. But after his mask of false righteousness was stripped away, Young-hak's ploy no longer worked. Both the court and the public knew these were just his fake tears. In fact, after receiving a life sentence in the first trial, he even planned 9 methods of meeting. He intended to use these 9 methods to reduce his sentence during the appeal. He also planned that after his release from prison, he would drive around the country selling fast food and publish an autobiography titled, "I Am a Murderer." In a letter to his daughter, he instructed her to learn makeup techniques in juvenile detention so that after release she could change her name through her grandmother and start a new life. He even mentioned he would implement a plan to get rich quickly within 1 year after his release from prison. However, Young-hak's plan did not succeed. In the final verdict on February 21st, Young-hak was sentenced to death, while his daughter received 6 years in prison and 4 years of probation. After numerous appeals by Young-hak, on November 29, 2017, the main perpetrator of this attention-grabbing Molar Daddy murder case received his final verdict from the Supreme Court: life imprisonment. The story of the national father ends here. Lee Young-hak exploited his own misfortune, wearing a false mask to gain the world's sympathy and attention, then used others' compassion for profit, enabling himself to live a luxurious lifestyle. Behind this cunning and evil facade was a person continuously corrupted by money and greed, leading him to commit greater crimes. These are truly things we should never approach. Now we will move on to the second incredibly unbelievable case in this video. Today's case takes place in Gyeonggi-do, located in the northwest of South Korea and known as the most populous province in the country. Between 2006 and 2008, a series of murders targeting women continuously occurred in the area, causing extreme anxiety among locals. At one point, police even suspected that the infamous Hwasung serial killer had returned, a case that haunted South Korea for 30 years. So, what exactly happened during this period? Let's turn back the clock to December 19th, 2008 to uncover the details of the case. That day was a Tuesday. The weather in Gyeonggi-do was still in the middle of winter, freezing cold with an overcast sky. The streets were mostly empty, as people preferred to stay indoors, gathered around the dining table to keep warm. That afternoon, a middle-aged couple from Gunpo, a city in Gyeonggi-do, called the police. They reported that their daughter was missing. After gathering details, police learned that their daughter, An Young-hak, was a 21-year-old university student. She had left home for school in the morning, but had been out of contact ever since with her phone turned off. Concerned, her parents reached out to her school and friends, but no one knew where she had gone. Desperate, the couple also enlisted the help of relatives and friends to search the streets near their home and surrounding areas, but they found nothing. At the time, a string of missing persons cases involving women had been reported across Gyeonggi-do, making the couple even more worried. Realizing they could not find their daughter on their own, they called the police for help. Upon receiving the report, the Gunpo City Police immediately launched an investigation. They focused on searching the route from An's home to her university, questioning residents and passers-by, especially in secluded areas and abandoned parks. Meanwhile, An's family printed missing person flyers, including her photograph and key identifying details, hoping that someone might come forward with information. The flyers proved effective. Investigators confirmed that An had left home at around 11 a.m. A witness later told police that at approximately 3:07 p.m., he spotted her at the Gunpo City Medical Center, just about 0.6 miles from her home. Police also analyzed An's mobile phone records and discovered that her phone lost signal at 3:40 p.m. The last known location was in the southwestern part of Ansan City, approximately 3.1 miles from where the witness had last seen her. 4 hours after An's phone lost signal, at around 7:40 p.m., her bank card was used at an ATM in Seoul. Police obtained the bank's surveillance footage, which led to a major breakthrough in the case. At 7:41 p.m., a 30-year-old man wearing a wig and a face mask was captured on camera, withdrawing 700,000 won in cash using An's card. He deliberately concealed his face and made calculated movements to avoid being identified. To determine his identity, police collected all available surveillance footage from nearby streets, shops, and other locations close to the bank. They also analyzed suspicious vehicles spotted in the area. After extensive investigation, police reviewed nearly 7,000 vehicles that had passed near the bank on the day of An's disappearance. By closely tracking vehicle movements, they narrowed in on one highly suspicious car, a black Hyundai Equus. That same day, before the suspect withdrew money, this black car was seen parked near the bank. After the withdrawal, the vehicle drove away. Fortunately, a surveillance camera had captured the license plate number. Using this information, police traced the vehicle's registered owner, a 66-year-old woman named Kim. Police then visited Kim's residence. She told them that she was not the one driving the car on the day of the incident. The vehicle had likely been driven by her son, Kang Ho-sun, a 40-year-old man living in Ansan. Kang worked as a massage therapist at a local spa. Kang's friends and clients described him as a simple, honest man who was highly dedicated to his work. On January 22, 2009, exactly 1 month after An's disappearance, investigators visited the massage parlor where Kang worked to question him. When asked if he was familiar with 21-year-old university student An Young-hak, Kang remained remarkably calm and answered all of the police's questions. However, when describing his driving route on the day of the incident, his statements completely contradicted the police's investigation findings. Detectives immediately recognized that he was lying. At that moment, they were almost certain that the man in front of them was the real suspect, but they needed concrete evidence. They quickly filed a request with the court for a search warrant. The next day, on January 23rd, police executed a search warrant at Kang's home and vehicles. During their investigation, they discovered that Kang owned 3 vehicles. The black Hyundai Equus that police had already identified as Sangyong Muso pickup truck, a Mitsubishi Libero. However, detectives found that the Hyundai Equus and another vehicle, a Bongo pickup truck, had been burned. The culprit was none other than Kang himself. Investigators believed that after being questioned by police, Kang had panicked, fearing that his identity would be exposed. As a result, he set fire to the 2 vehicles, likely in an attempt to destroy any remaining evidence of his crimes. The Mitsubishi Libero, which was unrelated to his criminal activities, was left untouched as he likely intended to keep using it. During their thorough search, investigators also discovered a computer with a hard drive inside Kang's home. However, all data on the drive had been wiped and could not be recovered. Police officially identified Kang as the prime suspect in the case and brought him in for questioning. During the interrogation, Kang pretended to remain calm and refused to admit any involvement in An's disappearance. However, his statements were full of contradictions when compared to the evidence police had already gathered. By January 25, 2009, after 2 days of continuous interrogation, Kang could no longer defend himself. He realized there was no way out and finally confessed to killing An. On the afternoon of An's disappearance, Kang was driving toward Gunpo. As he approached the city's medical center, he noticed a young woman waiting alone at a bus stop. Seeing an opportunity, he pulled his car closer and asked if she needed a ride. At the time, the weather was freezing, and An, eager to reach her university quickly, accepted the ride. However, after being in the car for a while, she realized that something was wrong. The route Kang was taking was not the way to her school, but by then, it was too late. Kang drove to a remote area and began attacking her. The moment she resisted, he punched her to subdue her, forcing her into submission. He then tied her hands behind her back using his necktie. After restraining her, he searched through her belongings and soon found her bank card. He then demanded that she reveal her PIN. After obtaining the information, he took a pair of stockings from her bag and strangled her to death. Once he was sure she was no longer breathing, he dragged her out of the car and buried her in the ground. Following Kang's confession, police searched the location he provided and discovered a partially decomposed body. DNA analysis confirmed that the remains belonged to 21-year-old university student Young-hak, who had been missing for over a month. The killer had been found, but this was only the beginning of the story. Over the past 2 years, multiple women had gone missing in Gyeonggi-do. Police needed to determine whether these disappearances were connected to Kang. Investigators discovered that Kang had previously lived in Hwaseong, in southern Gyeonggi-do. In that area, a woman had gone missing, and her phone signal had last been recorded near Kang's residence. Additionally, 3 other missing women had last been seen waiting at bus stops, in circumstances eerily similar to On's case. However, Kang repeatedly denied involvement in any previous disappearances. He even mocked police, saying, "If you find evidence, I'll admit it. If not, stop trying to frame me." Forensic experts thoroughly examined Kang's home and burned vehicles. After an extensive investigation, they managed to recover a DNA sample from one of his burned cars. Lab results revealed that the DNA matched a missing person from November 2008, a 48-year-old housewife named Kim Soo-hee. Additionally, investigators discovered a black plastic bag containing pink women's underwear and 70 pairs of stockings hidden on Kang's rooftop. Inside his home and car, they also found bloodstains, strands of hair, and other forensic evidence. After DNA testing, the samples matched multiple missing women from previous cases. Kang told police that he considered himself a textbook psychopath. He claimed that he had watched several TV programs about mental disorders and believed that his condition resembled that of a psychopath. In the end, he admitted responsibility for 7 prior disappearances. Kang Ho-sun was born in October 1969 in a remote rural village in Seocheon County, Chungcheongnam Province. His family had a modest income, neither rich nor poor, but financially stable enough to not worry about basic necessities. He was the second of 5 siblings. Kang was married 4 times, experiencing complicated relationships and emotional entanglements. He had a striking appearance and a charming, gentle demeanor, making him highly skilled at seducing women. A single glance from him could leave his targets captivated. He viewed women as possessions, seeing them as objects to dominate and control. Despite having been married 4 times, many women were still willing to become his wife. On the surface, no one would ever associate him with a serial killer. Kang's father was a strict man, but he never punished his children without reason. When Kang was still a child, his father died in an accident, leaving his mother to raise all the children alone. Kang attended elementary and middle school close to home. For high school, he studied at Buyo Agricultural High School in Chungcheongnam Province, where he graduated with excellent marks. His teachers and classmates described him as a well-dressed, polite, and sincere person. He was considered intelligent and capable. After graduating high school, he did not pursue higher education. Instead, he took a job as a truck driver, leaving home and settling in Ansan, Gyeonggi Province. Later, Kang enlisted in the military. During his mandatory service, he used his good looks and soldier status to attract and date multiple women. At that time, he had not committed any known crimes. However, during one of his military leaves, he stole a farmer's cow. This was his first recorded crime, and as a result, he was discharged from the military in disgrace. Sometime later, he and his older brother established a livestock farm in Suwon, Gyeonggi Province, where they raised cattle and other small animals together. By 1992, at the age of 23, Kang married his first wife, and the couple had 2 sons together. Initially, their marriage was harmonious, but over time, conflicts arose, leading to separation. After 3 years of living apart, the couple officially divorced, ending their 6-year marriage. Kang was granted custody of their 2 sons. After his divorce, Kang continued to be surrounded by women, likely due to his attractive appearance. Less than 6 months later, he married his second wife and had another son. However, his two older sons did not approve of this new marriage, which only lasted 6 months before ending in divorce. 3 years later, he married for the third time, but this marriage was extremely rushed, both in how it started and how it ended. The couple met, moved in together, and divorced all within a year. During his time with his third wife, he was already having an affair with the woman who would become his fourth wife. 2 years after his third divorce, Kang officially registered his marriage with his fourth wife. However, just 2 months after their wedding, a tragic incident occurred. On October 30th, 2005, a fire broke out in their home under mysterious circumstances, killing both Kang's fourth wife and her mother. Kang and his two older sons survived because they were in a separate room, far from the flames. Police conducted a 3-day investigation into the fire, but because the blaze was so intense, most of the evidence had been destroyed. They were unable to determine the exact cause, and the case was ultimately ruled an accident. For Kang, however, the fire turned into a financial windfall. Investigators later discovered that he had taken out 4 life insurance policies on his fourth wife, with a total payout of 480 million won. Since the fire was ruled an accident, he collected the full compensation from the insurance companies. After receiving the money, he immediately purchased multiple luxury cars and used part of the funds to open a massage parlor. Following his fourth wife's death, his criminal impulses escalated. 2 years later, on September 7, 2006, while driving, Kang spotted a 23-year-old female employee named Yoon Jung-hyun standing alone. She was beautiful and wearing a pair of alluring stockings, which triggered his violent urges. He approached her with smooth-talking charm. Yoon, noticing his handsome face, gentle demeanor, and expensive car, let her guard down and accepted the ride. Little did she know, Kang had no intention of letting her go. He drove her to a secluded area, sexually assaulted her, and then strangled her to death. Afterward, he threw her body off a cliff. This was the first murder he admitted to committing. After successfully killing Yoon, Kang's bloodlust intensified. 6 months later, he targeted karaoke bar hostesses. On December 14, 2006, Kang visited a karaoke bar in Gunpo and invited a 45-year-old woman named Bae Kyung-mi to sing with him. Using his manipulative charm and persuasive words, he convinced her to leave with him. He drove her to a deserted road in Hwaseong, where he assaulted and killed her, then buried her body on a nearby hillside. Just 10 days later, on December 24, 2006, Kang struck again. He used the same method, going to a karaoke bar in Suwon, where he lured a 37-year-old woman named Park Sunga into his car. He later buried her body on a hillside in Ansan. Despite the short time frame between the murders, police were unable to connect the cases, as the victims' bodies had not been discovered. According to Kang, his motive for killing was simple. He did it purely for the thrill. After committing 3 murders without being caught, he felt an overwhelming sense of excitement and satisfaction. By January 3, 2007, Kang expanded his targets beyond karaoke hostesses. That day, he picked up a 52-year-old office worker named Park Jung-ja at a bus stop in Hwaseong. He lured her into his car, drove her to a secluded area, and killed her in the same way as his previous victims. 3 days later, on January 6, 2007, he went back to a karaoke bar and set his sights on a 37-year-old woman named Kim Hae-young. He lured her into his car and drove her to a nearby hotel. After engaging in intercourse, he strangled her with a necktie and buried her deep in the mountains. The next day, on January 7, 2007, while driving past a bus stop in Seoul, Kang spotted a 21-year-old university student named Yeon Mi-young waiting alone. He used the same method to convince her to get into his car, then assaulted and murdered her. He later buried her body near a river. After these crimes, Kang stopped for a while, but on November 9, 2008, he couldn't suppress his urges any longer. That day, he drove around the city looking for his next victim. While passing a bus stop in Suwon, he lured a 48-year-old housewife named Kim Soo-hee into his car. After killing her, he buried her body on a hill in Ansan. On December 19, 2008, exactly 1 month later, 21-year-old university student Young-hak disappeared. It was An's disappearance that eventually led police to Kang, as investigators tracked his vehicle through surveillance footage, leading to his arrest. Kang had a disturbing tactic when committing his crimes. To present himself as a kind and trustworthy man, he kept a photo of himself with a Siberian husky inside his car. According to Kang, he used this trick to imitate the infamous American serial killer Gary Leon Ridgway, also known as the Green River Killer. Once he got a woman into his car, he would use the photo as a conversation piece, making his victims feel at ease. Then, once they had let their guard down, he would drive them to a remote location and attack them. Kang also revealed that his preferred weapon of choice for his murders was stockings. To destroy evidence, he would burn all the stockings before burying his victims. Some victims fought back fiercely, scratching his face with their nails. Fearing that their fingernails might contain his DNA, Kang would cut off their nails, or in some cases even sever their fingers, before disposing of the bodies. His cruelty extended beyond humans. Kang was so deranged that he killed and ate the husky from the photo after using it for his deception. In reality, he had no love for dogs. In fact, he treated them horrifically. At his farm, Kang kept more than 10 huskies, but during the harsh winters, he deliberately refused to feed them, leaving them to starve and freeze to death. Some witnesses even reported hearing frequent cries of animals from his farm, but to Kang, this was all just normal behavior. Based on Kang's own testimony, police were able to locate the remains of several victims. However, some bodies were never recovered, as Kang himself couldn't remember where he had buried them. The victims that were found were all discovered without clothing, with a single stocking wrapped around their necks and deep wounds on their fingers, grim evidence of the horrors they endured before their deaths. The brutality of Kang's crimes led police to suspect that he might be linked to even more cases, but they were unable to find additional concrete evidence. Most serial killers are often driven by childhood trauma or life frustrations that spiral into violence. However, Kang was an exception. He came from a harmonious family, lived a comfortable life, and showed no early signs of a potential serial killer. Regarding Kang's motives, criminologists believe that he bore no resentment toward society or any specific individual. Instead, his crimes were purely for his own pleasure. His cold-blooded, sadistic nature sent chills down people's spines. Beyond the murders he confessed to, many also suspected that Kang committed insurance fraud and was actually responsible for the deaths of his fourth wife and mother-in-law. Investigators also suspected him in multiple arson cases, including a fire that destroyed a store and another that burned one of his own cars. These incidents resulted in massive insurance payouts, with Kang ultimately collecting 660 million won, approximately 450,000 USD. After registering his marriage with his fourth wife, Kang immediately purchased a high-value life insurance policy for her, naming himself as the sole beneficiary. When his fourth wife died in the fire, her family found the circumstances suspicious and urged police to continue the investigation. However, due to a lack of solid evidence, authorities had no choice but to close the case. Even the insurance company suspected fraud, believing that the fire might have been deliberately set. But without proof, they were legally obligated to pay out the claim. Kang repeatedly denied any involvement in the fire. After Kang's arrest, his face was widely published across newspapers and online media. At the time, South Korea had privacy laws protecting criminals' identities, but the public outcry over Kang Ho-sun's case led to a major shift in public opinion. Many argued that protecting a criminal's privacy did nothing to help public safety. This sparked a new legal movement, allowing the release of photos of criminals involved in major cases. When the details of Kang's crimes were exposed, women across South Korea were terrified, especially after learning that he targeted women wearing stockings. Many became so paranoid that they stopped wearing stockings altogether. Some women even changed how they dressed, opting for sportswear when leaving bars to avoid drawing attention. Women also stopped accepting rides from strangers, and even when taking taxis, they would photograph the license plate and send it to friends or family, a precaution to ensure they wouldn't disappear without a trace. After his face was revealed in the media, Kang was furious at the police. He complained bitterly, saying, "If my face is exposed like this, what will happen to my children?" He feared that his sons would be identified as the children of a serial killer, which could ruin their lives. On April 8, 2009, Kang's trial began at the Suwon District Court. He was charged with 10 counts of murder and arson. However, he initially denied any involvement in the deaths of his fourth wife and mother-in-law. By April 22, 2009, realizing that he could no longer escape justice, he finally admitted to setting the fire, hoping that his confession might reduce his sentence. However, the Suwon District Court sentenced Kang Ho-sun to death, ensuring that his reign of terror would come to an end. He later appealed the verdict, opposing the court's decision. However, 3 months later, on July 23, 2009, the Seoul Supreme Court dismissed his appeal, upholding the original ruling. Throughout the entire process, from his arrest to his sentencing, Kang never showed any remorse. On the contrary, he appeared completely indifferent, as if everything was just a normal part of life. By April 2014, Kang's prison life had been made public. He had fully adapted to life behind bars and had even developed a passion for sculpture. Although South Korea still has the death penalty on paper, it has not been enforced for many years. Kang Ho-sun committed unforgivable crimes, and in the end, he will likely spend the rest of his life in prison, where his reign of terror will finally come to an end. That concludes this case. We have just explored 2 of South Korea's most chilling criminal cases, compiled and presented in detail. What do you think about these 2 cases? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Goodbye.